Blood. There was so much blood. Isla's hands were soaked with it, pressing desperately against Cale's chest as his blood pulsed hot and wet between her fingers. His eyes had rolled back, his body going limp in her arms, and she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but keep pressure on the wound and pray to every god she'd ever heard of. No, 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 Cale, please, she begged, her voice breaking. Stay with me. You don't get to tell me you love me and then die. You don't get to do that. Marcus was suddenly there, ripping off his shirt to add to the pressure. Ambulance is 2 minutes out. Jin's clearing a path. Boss, if you can hear me, you better hold on. But Cale wasn't responding. His lips were turning pale, his breathing shallow and rattling in a way that made Isla's heart want to stop entirely. The geometric patterns on his arms, those beautiful celestial designs she'd memorized over 3 years of stolen glances, were now streaked with red. It felt wrong, sacrilegious somehow, like watching art being destroyed. Why did you do that? Isla whispered, tears streaming down her face, mixing with his blood on her hands. Why did you jump in front of me? But she knew why. It was the same reason he'd been willing to trade his entire empire for her life. The same reason he'd stormed a warehouse full of armed men. The same reason he'd kept her at arm's length for 3 years, terrified that getting too close would put her in danger. He loved her, completely, devastatingly, dangerously. And now he might die because of it. The ambulance arrived in a chaos of sirens and flashing lights. Paramedics swarmed them, pushing Isla gently but firmly aside as they worked on Cale. She watched, numb and shaking, as they cut away his blood-soaked shirt, attached monitors, started an IV. Single gunshot wound to the upper left chest, one of them said. Pulse is weak, BP dropping. We need to move now. They loaded him onto a stretcher. Isla tried to follow, but a paramedic stopped her. Are you injured? She looked down at herself, at the blood covering her dress, her hands, her arms. None of it was hers. No, I need to go with him. Family only in the ambulance. I'm his secretary, she said, and the word felt inadequate, felt like a lie because she was so much more than that now. Then you'll have to follow in a car. Marcus took her arm. Come on, I'll drive. Jin, stay here and deal with the police. Yuna, meet us at Seoul Medical Center. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Isla sat in the passenger seat, staring at her blood-covered hands, replaying those final moments over and over. The look on Dee's face, that twisted satisfaction. The way Cale had moved without hesitation, putting himself between her and the bullet. The sound of the gunshot, so loud it had made her ears ring. He's going to make it, Marcus said, though his voice was tight with his own fear. Boss is too stubborn to die, you'll see. But Isla couldn't speak, couldn't offer false reassurances, because all she could think about was what Dee had said. About Cale's real name. About a fire a brother left behind, a past that had been hidden. Who was Cale Kang? Or Hyun Woo, apparently. Who was the man she'd fallen in love with? They arrived at the hospital to find Cale had already been rushed into emergency surgery. A nurse directed them to a waiting area, sterile and cold with fluorescent lights that made everything feel even more surreal. Yuna arrived minutes later, her purple hair disheveled, her laptop bag clutched to her chest. Any news? Surgery, Marcus said. That's all we know. They settled in to wait. Minutes crawled by like hours. Isla sat there, still covered in blood, still shaking, unable to process everything that had happened in the span of a few hours. Finally, she spoke. Who is Dee? Marcus and Yuna exchanged glances. You need to hear that from boss, Marcus said carefully. He might not wake up to tell me, Isla shot back, her voice sharper than she intended. Marcus, please, I need to understand. I need to know who I'm sitting here praying for. Another long silence. Then Marcus sighed, running a hand over his face. Fine, but this doesn't leave this room, and if boss pulls through, he gets to fill in the details himself. Understood. Isla nodded. Cale wasn't always Cale, Marcus began. 20 years ago, he was Kim Hyun-woo, youngest son of a low-level gang enforcer in Busan. His father was a drunk and a gambler. His mother died when he was 10. He had one older brother, Kim D-young, D. They were close, Yuna added softly. From what boss told me once, Dee practically raised him after their mother died. Marcus continued. When Hyun Woo was 15, their father got in deep with the wrong people, owed money he couldn't pay. So one night those people came to collect, burned down their apartment with the whole family inside. Isla felt sick. Kale said he left Dee to die. He didn't, Marcus said firmly. He tried to save him, went back into that burning building 3 times. The first time he got their father out, man was already dead from smoke inhalation. Second time he went for Dee, but the stairs had collapsed. He couldn't reach him. The third time the firefighters had to physically drag him away because the whole structure was coming down. They never found Dee's body, Yuna said. It was assumed he died in the fire. So Kale thought his brother was dead, Isla whispered. Not just thought, he saw that building collapse. There was no way anyone could have survived. Marcus leaned back against the wall. After that, Hyun Woo disappeared, reinvented himself, moved to Seoul, changed his name to Kale Kang, spent years building himself up from nothing. Everything he did, every deal he made, every piece of power he accumulated, it was all to make sure he'd never be that helpless again, never be unable to protect the people he cared about. It made terrible sense now. Kale's obsessive need for control, his reluctance to let people close, his fury when Isla had been taken. He'd lost everyone he'd ever loved once before. He couldn't survive losing someone again. But Dee survived, Isla said. Apparently, Marcus replied, and he blames Boss for leaving him behind. Even though Kale tried to save him. Trauma does strange things to memory. Maybe Dee doesn't remember it that way. Maybe he's rewritten history in his head to make Kale the villain. Or maybe he's just so twisted by what happened that he needs someone to blame, and his brother is convenient. Isla closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the tragedy of it all. 2 brothers, both scarred by the same fire, both shaped by the same loss, now on opposite sides of a war neither of them really wanted. Ms. Santos. Isla's eyes snapped open. A surgeon stood in the doorway, still in scrubs, a surgical mask hanging around her neck. How is he? Isla was on her feet instantly. Mr. Kang is out of surgery. The bullet missed his heart by centimeters, but it did significant damage to his left lung. We've repaired what we could, but the next 24 hours are critical. He's in the ICU now, still unconscious. But he'll live, Isla pressed. The surgeon hesitated. His condition is serious but stable. If he makes it through the night without complications, his chances improve significantly. It wasn't the reassurance Isla wanted, but it was something. Can I see him? Immediate family, only for now. I'm his fiancé, Isla lied without hesitation. The surgeon's expression softened. 5 minutes. He won't know you're there, but some people believe hearing familiar voices helps. Isla followed her down a maze of hallways to the ICU. The room they entered was dim, filled with the beeping of monitors and the wheeze of a ventilator. And there, in the bed, looking smaller and more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him, was Kale. His chest was heavily bandaged, tubes and wires running from his body to various machines. His face was pale, almost gray, and those beautiful tattoos on his arms seemed muted without his consciousness to give them life. 5 minutes, the surgeon repeated, then left them alone. Isla moved to his bedside, taking his hand carefully, avoiding the IV. His skin was cool to the touch. Hey, she whispered. I don't know if you can hear me, but I need you to listen. You don't get to leave me, Kale, or Hyun Woo. Whatever name you want to use, I don't care. You don't get to tell me you love me and then die on me. She paused, swallowing hard against the tears threatening to spill over again. I understand now why you kept me at a distance, why you were so terrified of letting me in. You've lost everyone you ever cared about, and you were trying to protect me from the same fate. But Kale, you can't protect people by pushing them away. You can't keep them safe by refusing to let them choose to be with you. The monitors beeped steadily, the only indication that he was still alive. I choose you, Isla continued, squeezing his hand. I choose you with all your secrets, all your scars, all your past. I choose you knowing exactly how dangerous your world is. I'm not some fragile thing that needs to be protected. I'm strong enough to stand beside you. I just need you to be strong enough to let me. She leaned down, pressing a kiss to his forehead. So you fight. You fight to come back to me, because I have things I need to say to you and you need to be awake to hear them. A nurse appeared in the doorway. I'm sorry, but time's up. Isla nodded, reluctantly releasing Cale's hand. I'll be back, she promised him. I'm not going anywhere. The next 18 hours were the longest of Isla's life. She refused to leave the hospital, camping out in the ICU waiting room despite Marcus's attempts to get her to go home and rest. She couldn't rest, not while Cale was fighting for his life. Una brought her clean clothes and takeout she couldn't eat. Marcus brought updates on the situation with Dee, who had vanished into the city like smoke. Jin stood guard, silent and vigilant, making sure no one who shouldn't be there got anywhere near the ICU. And Isla waited. She dozed fitfully in an uncomfortable chair, jerking awake every time a doctor walked by, every time a monitor alarm sounded somewhere in the ICU. The blood had been washed from her hands, but she could still feel it, still see it every time she closed her eyes. It was dawn, pale light filtering through the waiting room windows, when the surgeon finally appeared with news. He's awake, she said, and Isla nearly collapsed with relief. Asking for you, actually. You can see him, but keep it brief. He needs rest. Isla practically ran to his room. Cale was propped up slightly in the bed, the ventilator gone, replaced with a nasal cannula. His eyes were open, tired but alert, and when he saw her, something in his expression crumbled. Isla, he rasped, his voice rough from the tube that had been in his throat. She moved to his bedside, taking his hand. You scared me. I'm sorry, he squeezed her fingers weakly. Are you hurt, did they? I'm fine. You took the bullet meant for me, remember? Good. His eyes drifted closed for a moment, then opened again with effort. D. Gone. Marcus and Jin are looking, but he disappeared. Cale's jaw tightened. He'll come back, he's not done. Then we'll deal with it together, Isla said firmly. But right now, you need to focus on healing. Isla, about what he said, about my past. I know, she interrupted gently. Marcus told me, about the fire, about Hyun Woo, about Dee, all of it. She watched fear flicker across his face, saw him brace for rejection, for her to pull away now that she knew the truth. Instead, she lifted his hand and pressed it against her cheek. I meant what I said when you were unconscious. I choose you, Cale. All of you, including the parts you've kept hidden. You don't understand, he said, his voice breaking. Everything I touch, everyone I care about, they get hurt. My mother, my father, Dee. Now you, I'm poison, Isla. You should run as far from me as you can. No, she said it with such conviction that his eyes widened. No, Cale, you're not poison, you're a survivor. You're someone who's been hurt and betrayed and who lost everything, and instead of letting it destroy you, you built something from the ashes. Yes, your world is dangerous. Yes, loving you comes with risks, but loving anyone comes with risks. That's what love is. I can't lose you, he whispered, and there were tears in his eyes now. Isla, I can't, it would destroy me. Then don't push me away. Let me stand beside you. Let me be your partner, not just your secretary. Let me help you carry the weight you've been carrying alone for so long. What if I can't protect you? Then we protect each other. She leaned down, resting her forehead against his. I'm not asking you to keep me safe, Cale. I'm asking you to trust me. Trust that I'm strong enough for this. Trust that together we're stronger than apart. He lifted his free hand with obvious effort, cupping her face, his thumb tracing the bruise on her cheek. You're the bravest person I've ever met. I learned from the best, she replied, and finally she saw him smile. It was small, tired, but real. I love you, he said. Whoever I am, whatever name I use, I love you, Isla Santos. I love you too, Kim Hyun Woo. She tested the name and watched something in his expression shift, not pain but recognition, acceptance. Or Cale Kang, or whoever you want to be, I love all of you. He pulled her down into a kiss, gentle and careful and full of promise. When they broke apart, he kept her close, their foreheads still touching. When I get out of here, he murmured, things are going to change. What do you mean? I mean I'm done keeping you at arm's length. I'm done pretending you're just my secretary. I want everyone to know you're mine, if you'll have me. Are you asking me to be your girlfriend while high on pain medication in a hospital bed? I'm asking you to be my everything, he corrected. Partner, equal, the person I come home to, the person I build a life with if you'll let me. Isla felt her heart swell so much she thought it might burst. Yes, she said simply. To all of it, yes. They stayed like that until the nurse came to shoo Isla out, insisting Cale needed rest. But as she left, she saw him watching her with an expression she'd never seen before. Not the careful control he usually wore, not the possessive jealousy from the gala, but hope, raw, vulnerable hope. The next week was a blur of recovery and rebuilding. Cale healed faster than the doctors expected, his stubborn determination to leave the hospital driving him to push through the pain. Marcus and Jin worked around the clock to secure their compromised network, to shore up defenses that Dee's attack had exposed. And Isla stood beside Cale through all of it, not as his secretary, but as his partner. The board meeting where he announced their relationship was tense. Several members objected, citing conflict of interest, unprofessionalism. Cale had listened to their concerns with that icy calm he was famous for, then said simply, Ms. Santos has earned her place at this table through 3 years of exemplary work. Her relationship with me doesn't change her qualifications. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to find other employment. No one had pushed further. But Dee remained a ghost, hovering over everything like a threat that hadn't yet materialized. They knew he was out there, planning, waiting. The question was when he would strike, not if. The answer came 2 weeks after Cale was released from the hospital. Isla was in Cale's penthouse, her penthouse now too, since she'd officially moved in. She was reviewing contracts when her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Roof, come alone, or I start killing his people one by one. Her blood ran cold. She knew who it was. She should have told Cale, should have called Marcus or Jin, but the message had been clear. Come alone. And she'd meant what she said about being strong enough for this world, about protecting each other. She left a note on Cale's desk, just in case. Then she took the elevator to the roof. Dee was waiting there, standing at the edge, looking out over Seoul. He'd lost the mask. Without it, the resemblance to Cale was striking. Same sharp features, same dark eyes. But where Cale's face carried the weight of responsibility and hard-won wisdom, Dee showed only bitterness. Ms. Santos, he said without turning, thank you for coming. What do you want, Dee? To talk, to understand. He finally looked at her. My brother, does he love you? Yes. Enough to die for you, apparently. Dee's laugh was hollow. That must be nice, to be loved like that. He loved you too, Isla said carefully. He tried to save you from that fire. He thought you were dead. He left me, Dee said, his voice rising. I was trapped, burning, screaming for him, and he left. He tried 3 times to reach you. The building collapsed. Did he tell you that? Or did his loyal dogs? Dee moved toward her. You weren't there, Miss Santos. You didn't hear me calling for him. You didn't feel what it was like to realize your own brother chose to save himself instead of you. That's not what happened. Then what did happen? Dee demanded. Because the way I remember it, I woke up in a hospital 3 months later with degree burns covering half my body and no family to claim me. I spent 5 years in juvie because they thought I'd started the fire. 5 years of hell while my brother was out here building an empire. Isla could hear the pain underneath the anger, could understand how trauma and time had twisted his memories into something dark. I'm sorry, she said, and meant it. I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm sorry Cale didn't find you, didn't know you were alive. But Dee, revenge won't heal what's broken inside you. Maybe not, but it'll make me feel better. He pulled out a gun. Do you know what my plan was? I was going to kill you in front of him, make him watch you die the way I watched everything I loved burn. But then I realized something. Death is too quick, too merciful. He aimed the gun at her, and Isla forced herself to stand still, to not show fear. So instead, Dee continued, I'm going to give my brother a choice. He can let you live and come with me, give himself up, or he can keep his empire and watch you die. Let's see what matters more. He's not here, Isla said, so unless you plan to wait. Oh, he's here, Dee interrupted, gesturing with the gun. He's been here for 3 minutes, standing in the stairwell, trying to figure out how to take me down without me shooting you first. Haven't you, brother? The stairwell door opened, and Kale emerged, hands raised, no weapon visible. He looked between Isla and Dee, his face carefully neutral, but Isla could see the fear in his eyes. "Let her go, Dee," Kale said. "This is between us." "Is it? Because it seems like she's very much involved." "She has nothing to do with what happened to us." "She has everything to do with it," Dee shouted. "She's the thing you love most, the thing you'd sacrifice everything for, just like you were supposed to be for me." Kale took a careful step forward. "Dee, I know you're angry, I know you feel betrayed, but I swear to you I tried to save you. I went back for you. I would have died in that fire if they hadn't pulled me out." "Lies." "It's not a lie, Dee, you're my brother, you were everything to me." Kale's voice cracked. "When they told me they couldn't find your body, when they said you were gone, it broke something in me. I've lived with that guilt every single day for 20 years. If that's true, then why didn't you look for me? Why didn't you find me?" "Because I thought you were dead," Kale said desperately. "Dee, if I had known, if I had any idea you were alive, I would have torn this country apart to find you." For the first time, Isla saw uncertainty flicker across Dee's face. "You were the one who taught me how to survive," Kale continued, moving closer. "You were the one who protected me when Dad was drunk and violent. You were the only family I had that mattered. I loved you. I still love you." "Then prove it," Dee said, and his hand was shaking now, the gun wavering. "Choose, her or your empire, right now." "Her," Kale said without hesitation. "I choose her, Dee. I choose love over power always. I learned that from you, remember? You used to tell me that power was meaningless if you had no one to share it with." Dee's face crumpled. And suddenly Isla saw not a villain, but a broken man. A man who'd been 15 years old when his world burned, who'd spent 20 years alone and bitter and convinced he'd been abandoned. "I just wanted my brother back," Dee whispered, and the gun lowered slightly. "Then put down the gun," Kale said gently, "and let me be your brother again." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, Dee's arm dropped to his side. The gun clattered to the rooftop. And Kale crossed the distance between them, pulling his brother into a fierce embrace. Dee collapsed against him, sobbing like a child, and Kale held him, his own tears falling freely now. "I'm sorry," Kale said over and over. "I'm so sorry, Dee. I'm sorry I couldn't reach you. I'm sorry you were alone. I'm sorry for all of it." "I missed you," Dee gasped out between sobs. "Hyun-woo, I missed you so much." I know, but I'm here now, and I'm not leaving you again." Isla watched them, her own tears streaming down her face, understanding that this was the healing both of them needed. Not revenge, not violence, but this. Reunion. Forgiveness. Family reclaimed. Later, much later, after Dee had been taken to a hospital for evaluation and treatment, after the police had been dealt with and statements given, Isla and Kale finally had a moment alone. They stood on that same rooftop where everything had almost ended, watching the sunset paint Seoul in shades of gold and amber. "Thank you," Kale said quietly, his arm around her waist, holding her close. "For what?" "For going up there alone. For talking to him, keeping him calm until I could get there. For being brave when I was terrified." "We protect each other, remember?" Isla leaned into him. "Besides, I could see the pain in him. He wasn't evil, Kale. He was just hurt." "I know. It's going to take time, therapy, a lot of work to rebuild what was broken. But he's my brother. I have to try." "We'll try," Isla corrected. "Together." He turned her to face him, his hands cupping her face gently. The bruise on her cheek had faded to a pale yellow, almost gone. "I told you you're mine," he said, echoing those words from what felt like a lifetime ago. "And I told you that you have to let me choose," she replied with a small smile. "But yes, I'm yours, and you're mine. That's how this works." "I love you, Isla Santos." "I love you, Kim Hyun-woo." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And as the sun set on Seoul, as the city lit up below them like a constellation of earthbound stars matching the designs on his skin, Isla thought about how far they'd both come. From boss and secretary to partners to lovers. From secrets and distance to honesty and intimacy. From two people afraid to love to two people brave enough to choose it despite the risks. It hadn't been easy. It had been terrifying and painful and dangerous. But it had been worth it. Because standing there in Kale's arms, safe and loved and home, Isla knew one thing with absolute certainty. They were exactly where they were meant to be. Together,